So the first question I've been told that we can give to the legal guy because I have strong views on tax that I know will get me into trouble. And he'll handle the kind of information you give to the SARB. I'd love to answer that. I can answer that for you offline around SARS. The second question is, do you keep your cash into USDT stablecoins or an offshore account? And that's a good question, right? So anyone who's familiar with stablecoins? Yeah, okay, that's good. Now stablecoins have done incredibly well in the last year. And I think what's quite important, you got to ask, if I had to answer this for myself, the first thing I will ask myself is, why is my money in a stable coin or in the US dollar? And the answer will be to earn interest, right? Because we all know what inflation is like in South Africa. I mean, they come out, Stats SA says inflation's 5.5%. Who believes that? I mean, absolutely not. And that's something I didn't touch on, which is quite important, where crypto and Bitcoin particularly acts as a hedge against inflation. It protects you from inflation. We've seen what inflation is like with electricity prices, food prices, housing, etc. So to answer your question, the first thing I'm going to look at is how much am I getting in interest on that USD account offshore? In a percentage, 3%, 4%, whatever. The next thing I'll ask myself is, what yield is interest, fancy word for interest, am I getting on the stable coin? Not financial advice, but I would encourage everyone in this room to look at what the return is on ZAR stable coins, South African rands. South African government bonds, for instance, are incredibly attractive in terms of what you get back. But when you look at what the returns are on the ZAR coin, for instance, they're also very, very attractive. And so you've got to weigh those things up. And that's the answer to the question. Weigh it up and look at what's the return, and finally, how quickly can I get that money out? Anyone who has money overseas knows how difficult it is, right? Foreign exchange control, SARS, a whole lot of things. With crypto, you're able to get that money back very quickly, instantly. And so those are the two things I'll think about. You want to answer the legal question on SARS? Yeah. How are you?
Hey, Sheikh, how are you doing? Good to see you. So, hi, guys. I'm Sam. I'm the head of compliance at Binance SA. Probably the most unpopular person here, but it's fine. Kaushik's cool. I'm not. So I think there was a question regarding SARS.
Yeah, what information do you give to SARS when you hold crypto?
Great. So obviously, we've had quite a few discussions with the SARS over the past 2 years as they try to grapple with taxation. And of course, I think anyone familiar with tax would understand that in order to be taxed, there has to be a taxable event, which in crypto terms speaks to either the gain or something similar. So in our discussions, for example, and from the discussion papers we've seen, with respect to taxation, at the moment the SARS has been looking at assessing crypto from the context of capital gains tax. But of course, even before that, they would still need to assess as and when the gain happens. And I think that's extremely difficult looking at the volatility of the crypto market. So at this point in time, we've obviously haven't had to exchange any information with the SARS. Of course, we don't believe at this stage they haven't really provided a legal basis to do so. But of course, as a tax compliant entity in South Africa, we're looking to work with the regulator in developing, and of course this speaks both to the SARS, the SARB and the FSCA, the FIC as well, where we're working towards, we obviously don't want a situation where you've got regulatory arbitrage, but we also want sensible legislation, and regulation. So at this point in time, to answer you directly, we aren't sharing your information with the SARS, so you're safe. Don't worry, you can hide it on the pillow. But I think over time, as the, for example, we obviously operate in countries across the world. What we have seen is that the tax authorities are becoming a lot more aggressive. But with respect to an information sharing perspective, a tax relationship is obviously between yourself and the taxman. As Binance, we obviously are we're in the process of becoming an FSP. We obviously play the role of a platform. We're an intermediary, and at this point in time, there would not be a legislative basis to sharing that. There may be over time, but we obviously are looking at working with the regulator. Thanks.
Sorry, let's take a question from the man who won the hoodie. I know it's going to be a hard question, so shout it out. Yeah, the lawyer can answer about Nigeria because I know it's kept him up at night.
Great. So on Nigeria, I think it's obviously what maybe we can chat after the session regarding exactly what's happened. I think we've obviously are engaged in. There's a lot of litigation happening at the moment. We've taken a particular posture, but out of respect, both obviously for the Nigerian regulator, we're looking at working with them to resolve it. But at this point in time, we don't necessarily see it repeating itself in the South African context. I think we're working very well with it. We've literally got a very open door relationship both with the FSCA and the SARB. The SARB hasn't really engaged crypto at this stage. The FSCA at the moment is obviously seen as the primary regulator. We'll continue to work together to address any issues in the country as well. Thanks.
Cheers, thanks. And on that, please don't accept financial advice from the guys you see on Instagram in the shiny suits, driving Lambos. I've seen too many of that. Question? We had a comment that said Bitcoin is a meme coin that went to private school. Okay. All right, so how I'll respond to that is, if I had to decide where to put my money in for the next 50 years, could I look myself in the mirror every morning and know my money is in Dogecoin? Could I? Do I think I could go to a store tomorrow and use Dogecoin to buy a burger? And more importantly, do I feel like it's going to store any value? Not even 50 years from now, but in 5 days from now. And so what's important to look at is what makes a meme coin a meme coin? Community. Everyone buying it. The Doge, the Pengus, the fart coins, I can't say some of the names of those coins, they're quite vulgar. It just means that everyone is buying it at the same time and it's going up. And we keep buying it. But here's the thing, I've been inside the development of many tokens, many coins, I've seen the engine room, and I'm here to tell you that whenever you look at any coin, this is Bitcoin, meme coins, whatever it is, always find out what the top 20 holders look like, right? Most of the time, if many of you follow Solana and the Solana meme coins and Pump Fund, etc., 80% of all the coins that are in circulation are owned by 2 or 3 people. Okay. Now, what does that mean? Any of you heard the term rug pull? Rug pull. Yeah, exactly. All that means is if you ever own an asset or a coin that's not democratized or held by a lot of people, it means that one guy can wake up in Dubai one morning and clear you out. And that's what happens with meme coins. And that's the danger. So even if Bitcoin is seen to be a meme coin that went to private school, is it something that can, you wake up tomorrow morning and suddenly it's all gone, it's vanished? There's only 21 million now in existence, and most of it's mined, over 90% of it's mined. What gives me comfort from holding Bitcoin personally is that the biggest institutions in the world, like BlackRock, are holding it. Is BlackRock going to rug pull me? Maybe. Is a guy in the shiny Lambo named Yusuf in Dubai going to rug pull me on his token? Probably yes. All right. And so what's to look for is always ask yourself, not how much money you can make, but how much money you stand to lose. That's it. And so if you can reduce the risk to the point where you can say, the chance of me losing all of this is super low, that's a good place to be. So don't worry about the upside, meme coins, worry about the downside, stable coins.
Okay, thanks. So I have a quick question. So given Binance's centralized control over assets and market influence, how do you see its role in aligning with the foundational principles of decentralization? Because we see Binance is becoming more regulated in the space. We see KYC procedures becoming more difficult, and we see that the government can come and ask for the address open up the KYC of the client and then expose the user at the end. We've seen working with the FBI in the United States. It's also coming down to South Africa, giving a lot of whales some fear in investing in Binance.
Okay, I'm going to hand over to legal, but I'll share my views very quickly on this. Who in this room is uncomfortable sharing a lot of information with the government? Whether it's SARS, whether it's a driver's license place, whether it's TV licenses. I don't want to get into TV licenses. It makes all of us feel uncomfortable, right? Because it's an invasion of your space, of your privacy. It's like, living in a surveillance state where every single thing you do is being monitored, is tracked. Anyone uncomfortable sharing the information on social media with the Facebooks, the Instagrams, the Twitters, right? Now, because crypto is anonymous and decentralized, it's extremely powerful. It's also an excellent avenue for money laundering, for financial crime, for washing money between people, because everything is verifiable on the blockchain, but you don't know who that person is. So you can bypass everything in the cash economy. Now, there's two parts to it. I know the legal expert will speak to the second part. I'll speak to the first part. The first part is governments don't like not being in control, right? Regulations, what people know, they can control. And if they don't know where you're spending your money, how you're earning your money, and where your money is invested, it makes banks useless. It makes governments useless because you become more powerful. The second side to balance with that is that crime thrives in spaces that you can't monitor and you can't access, right? Particularly financial crime. In South Africa, I know he's going to speak to it, but in South Africa, you have so much of money that flows where you can't track it. So I put to you, what if, before I get to it, how many of you are unhappy with government spending, right? On wasteful stuff and corruption and everything, right? I don't want to tell this in a political rant, but I'm unhappy. What if you had a system where all expenses and everything that went through payments was verifiable on the blockchain for everyone to see? Full transparency. It would make it better, right? It would make tender processes better. It would make tax payments and collections a lot more efficient. And so, in order to do that, sometimes the price to pay, unfortunately, is some level of verification. Because the good guys are the ones who are verifying themselves, and the bad guys aren't, right? And so we'll speak a bit about money laundering and KYC and the need for it, but based on my experience in the space, we have seen many people lose their funds, be hacked, be scammed, and they weren't able to recover it because there was no identity linked to it. So your funds are not technically safe because you don't know who the funds belong to. And in my view, it's a balancing act of giving away the minimum level of information to remain secure and the maximum level of information to stay anonymous.
Thanks, Yoshik. I think there's a philosophical question here where we say, how do you create a safe environment in an unsafe ecosystem, right? Because that's effectively what blockchain technology does, especially when you move to your very extreme anonymized exchanges, which are completely decentralized, and you've got no way of recuperation. I'll give you a practical example. For example, I've done investigations where we've seen pensioners lose millions. A person literally met someone on Telegram, hey, I'm Yusuf with a Ferrari, with a Ferrari in Dubai, invest with me. You literally get, a bit of money back, typical investment fraud. You'll make a return maybe in the first 2 months. By the 4th month, the guy's gone, and that's your pension savings gone. So, we've obviously seen scary stories like that, and it's the reason why Binance has obviously adopted a culture of compliance, because we obviously believe that compliance in that sense becomes a competitive advantage, because while everyone wants to make money, you want to make it in a safe ecosystem. You don't want to lose money. And that's the principle that we effectively apply. So, for instance, I think you made an important point pertaining to our collaboration or cooperation, rather, with investigations. We obviously are bound by your laws of privacy, right? Information privacy, where we don't share your information with people who are going to use it nefariously, and the alternative, people who are not going to use it for a particular purpose. So we're very strict with who we share information with, but at the same time, given, in South Africa, we obviously now operate in a highly regulated environment. We're seeing it across the world. We obviously, for instance, some of the biggest markets in Dubai, for example, we at the moment are currently regulated by the VARA in Dubai. We're regulated by the Central Bank of Bahrain in Bahrain. And these are very strategic markets with huge amounts of money from a forex perspective. But we obviously have to play by the rules of the game to ensure that, one, we get a ticket to the game, but then most importantly, that we don't lose people's money. And this is how we develop the relationship of trust. So I think it's to Kaushik's point, it's a balancing act. It's all about ensuring that we take the amount of information that we need to ensure that the environment is compliant. We're not doing business with anonymous bots, and we're ensuring that even from a P2P perspective, you're able to trust the environment. Obviously, this is why we always drive people to stay in app. Don't, someone sends you a text and say, look, contact me on Telegram. More often than not, the person's a scammer. Stay in app and really, use the ecosystem well. It functions, it works. We've got a very minimal failure rate. Not to beat our own drum, but we've got a state-of-the-art information security systems. We stress test a lot. We uphold international standards, but we can only do that within the environment, and that's probably why reasons for things like collaborations. I think Larry's also here. So Larry is our local counsel in South Africa. He obviously, you can chat to him afterwards. We've dealt, for instance, with a lot of kidnappings in South Africa. This has now become a very serious thing. And it's terrible where people kidnap people, they then are requesting payment in crypto under the misapprehension that it's going to be concealed. We've worked quite on a few matters with the Hawks in that sense, ensuring that we're able to recover funds and ultimately help law enforcement in finding the people. So while we obviously don't want a situation where you don't want to go back to the old days, I remember I met the late Praveen Godan once at a seminar. He was with Trevor Manuel. And he was unhappy with my suit, and he said he wonders if I pay my taxes, right? So at that point, they literally, you literally had a situation where people used to scan your license plates, they get your number, and then assess, does this person pay their taxes? That's not the type of surveillance state that we're driving for. We ultimately drive sensible regulation, which effectively doesn't hamper innovation, and that's the balance. Cool.
That's it.
So we're just going to have another legal counsel, Larry. He's going to chat to you guys about the elephant in the room, which is the travel rule that some of you might have seen. There was an announcement. So some of you might know it very well. Some of you might have just skimmed past it. Some of you might not know what it is at all. So Larry's going to chat to us about that. But yeah, we take a lot of pride in doing a lot of verification and knowing how things work and who people are as well. So that's why we have a lot of information that is collected. But like Sam was saying, it's only the information that we need, and where we can assist. There's a lot of work that's done behind the scenes that you guys don't hear about in terms of collecting information. And it's only because we have such information that some people, and organizations are able to be assisted to the level that we do. So, it may be frustrating for some of you guys, but it is what it is, and we have to do it, to make sure that crypto is better for all. That's what we do, guys. So regulation is regulation. It's for the betterment of all, and it's for the betterment of all you guys. And that's what we do as Binance.
Okay, good morning, everyone. So maybe just to break the ice, because everybody looks very serious, as if they're waiting for anticipation for something very important. I got a call, they were like, yo, we need you to come to the South African Meetup. And I'm like, what do you want legal doing at the South African Meetup? Like, what are we going to be discussing? So I took the call and I was like, okay, do I dress up in a suit or do I come chilled? But now looking at the crowd, I should have came in a suit. Hey, it's a Saturday. So I was like, okay, cool, let me play it down. So just on a lighter note, good to meet everyone, nice to see everyone. I think it's always positive when you start seeing the people behind the Binance logo you get to meet with us and interact with us. So really, after the stage, after this conversation, I'll be outside for a bit and happy to engage with anyone. I know that some of the P2P merchants are also out here, so again, I'll also pick up conversation with you guys. But thank you for the topic, and to get into it, I'll probably leave the more technical stuff for Sam. I think he's better suited to break that down. But I wanted to actually start off by saying crypto is a team sport. And I say that not lightly. I say it in the sense of where there's if you look at the blockchain, the way it verifies and everyone has access to everything, if you don't have an ecosystem like that, it's more susceptible for fraud and issues in the long run. And with this travel rule, it shouldn't be a surprise. This actually happened before. If you guys recall, FIC has the cash threshold reporting thing of 50,000, under 50,000 that you have to report, right? That already should show you a good sign that they already see crypto assets similar to cash. And I'm a big advocate for showing that crypto is as equivalent to cash. Cash is always king, but I think every king has an heir that eventually takes its place, and crypto is definitely that. So that's my philosophical part of things. Specifically, wanted to highlight the point that with the travel rule being implemented, right, it's really just the storing of information, right? Not that information wasn't already stored and processed on our servers and we weren't keeping record. It's not something that automatically gets sent to FIC and you know, now you're worried about, is this the new world order? Are people tracking every single thing we do? It's none of that. And really, as Binance being one of the leading stakeholders in the game, we always want to make sure that, as Sam echoed, compliance is top notch and we're always in alignment, as well as security and safety, and talking about the horrific stuff that we unfortunately have to deal with, like kidnapping, human trafficking, like crazy things that we have to assist members of the public with. In fact, some of our intel is even better than what you'd see that the traditional policing system has, and we actually help with the bank's investigations when things get into the digital space. So there's a lot of benefit in terms of crypto. There's a lot of benefit that's going to come from this rule. It might be a bit of a schlep in the first couple of iterations, but Binance always has your guys' interest at heart. So the tech guys will make it become more seamless. It will be less of irritation. And before you know it, just like how we had to get acclimatized to certain banking systems, we'll also get acclimatized as an industry. And this is a good step again because it reinforces the fact that crypto is here to stay. And those that got in early, I'm sure they still always have smiles on their faces. But we keep on pushing this sport forward because we all got a piece of skin in it. And yeah, I think this is a welcoming move from at least Binance's perspective that the FIC has done. Yeah, thank you.
And also just to add to that, right, so it's not just Binance that has to comply. This is all exchanges in South Africa, right? We were the first to comply. We led the race there, but every single exchange in this country, when they do, has to comply. So it's not just the Binance or anything. So yeah, compliance first, but it's everyone as well that has to comply. It's regulation. It's the law, guys. It's the law.
Okay, I want to know about Web3. Web3, is it a third party?
All right. So we just had a quick question. I want to find out about Web3.
Yeah. Okay.
And basically, what is Web3? Is it like the third time you use the internet? You know, like what does it even mean? Okay, so Web 2.0 is just an extension of decentralization. So think Uber, Spotify, Netflix, Airbnb, where all of a sudden you had a central system like Airbnb, where you had one hotel, become a little bit more decentralized, where every single person now can become their own landlord, right? And Web3 is an extension of that, where anyone can become a landlord anywhere without going to Airbnb by using a smart contract. So it's the purest form that we see right now of decentralization, right? That's Web3. And all of the apps that you see being built on it are fundamentally built on a few very important parts of Web3, which are smart contracts. So smart contracts, you can think of it as a legal contract, but a digital encrypted version. It's also pioneered on the blockchain. And the blockchain is essentially Excel. Everyone here uses Excel. But think about Excel where it's a ledger that is encrypted and it can't be changed, right? So that's a verifiable source. Think of it as a global little Excel. And so those are the things that form part of Web3: tokenomics, the blockchain, fractional ownership, and decentralization, right? So a super technical answer, and it's okay if it feels a little bit complex, but in a nutshell, all you need to know is it's a whole lot of apps and a whole lot of platforms that are building solutions that are all decentralized.
Yusuf, I think it would be really helpful if you explained to everybody about the 21 million Bitcoins that will ever be in circulation. I'm not sure if everybody in the room is aware of and understands that 95% of all the Bitcoin that are ever going to be produced, 19.8 million, are already in circulation. So as a result, the laws of supply and demand are going to kick in, and there's going to be a floor on the price of Bitcoin going forwards. I think that's really important in differentiating Bitcoin compared to meme coins and other tokens that are out there.
Put it to it in the chat very briefly around the 21 million and the 95% mine. But, you know, the gentleman is bang on. If you look at the US dollar, all you have to do is turn on the money printer, right? And you print. And that's a fancy way of summarizing stimulus. And that's how stimulus works. The Federal Reserve goes out, they print cash, and that's also what triggers inflation. And it's one of the core fundamental parts of owning a Bitcoin is that it's finite. There will only be 21 million in existence. Over 90%, I think it's close to 95% now, are mined. They're out there. People own it. And so there will be a race to get to the bottom and to own one. And the future of wealth, or, you know, how we look at the way nations are formed and the businesses are run, is who owns Bitcoins. And you can see the biggest signal of sentiment and encouragement for me is seeing the largest financial institutions in the world, like BlackRock, with $10 trillion under management, going out and buying Bitcoin for their clients, right? And so when Wall Street starts to get involved, it either means that they see something in it for themselves, or their clients, which are very sophisticated and smart people, see something. But I really think that's such a good point, so thank you so much for bringing that up.
I wanted to find out if are there any special market maker programs in South Africa?
Yeah, so special programs. So we definitely do have our own market maker internal systems, you know, where we obviously make the use of an internal market maker, but definitely not. I think what you're referring to could be something which we could look at for, we've got Binance Labs, which looks at those innovations where, for example, strategic entrepreneurs, maybe like yourself, are looking at, providing, any particular service similar to a market-making functionality. But we definitely don't have any in South Africa at the moment. No, we only use our internal systems for that.
Hello, everyone. My question is with regards to, in the beginning you said there was the public server for the cryptocurrency, which is used by the majority of the users, and the private server. In terms of the private server, what's the process in creating my own private server, and what are the legal ramifications, especially in South Africa, of going that route?
Yeah, look, I think regarding creating a private blockchain, we've obviously, so there's one blockchain, let me put it that way, which is obviously the one where we say it's immutable, we've got full access, we understand, which address sends money where, or crypto where, and we're able to store it, for infinity. Now, creating your own and the legal implications of that, I think I should bill you for it because you're now asking for legal advice. But in any event, you would obviously need to look at, one, you'd need the technology for it. And then secondly, unless if you've got the liquidity, then you're fine. You'd probably need another major exchange who you would, seek some sort of relationship with in order to enable you to have a liquidity provider, unless you would have your own. So those are probably the things you would need to look at. And then, of course, given that you would effectively now be conducting the services of a financial services provider, you would then need to register as an FSP with the FSCA. So that's probably the process you would embark on. And I'm going to take a share because I've now given you advice.
My question stems from some information we got some years ago where there was talk about a credit card, a Binance credit card. My question is there a Binance cash card so that I can put, while I can go to Pick and Pay and pay with BTC, but I can't go to Checkers and pay with a BTC. Is there a cash card that or is there thought of a cash card where I could transfer some BTC into a cash card which is not attached to ZAR necessarily, and I could pay with that? So if I want to purchase a house or a loaf of bread at Checkers, I would like to use a Binance credit card so it doesn't go into, or Binance cash card, so it doesn't go into my ZAR account.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I'll take it a step back, right? Most of us, sometimes we forget that Binance is a tech company first. And when I say that is the way it formed and the way it started was really focused on tech. That being said, the way the market has changed and adapted and the way we've now entered in different markets, certain products are available in certain jurisdictions, and other jurisdictions, unfortunately, there's a bit more red tape to get through. At the end of the day, we'd either work with a partner, MasterCard or Visa, in terms of issuing that. And if we look at like user behavior in South Africa, there has to also be a big need for that, for us to then start investing and saying, this is a product that makes sense in this space. So it is something that's available in other markets. South Africa hasn't really gotten to that level of adoption. That's why we need all of you to get it to that level of adoption. Then you'll start seeing more sophisticated products, because with that, it means that the South African business also needs to change to adapt to those needs. So credit, we need to obviously be with the NCR, registered with them, and there's a lot of other elements and licenses that then come into play. So we're here for the long run. That should be something that's in the pipeline, and yeah, maybe next meetup we're having a topic, a conversation about it.
I think, yeah, maybe just in addition, we've obviously at this point had to, because we're obviously driving utility majorly. So what we're trying to do is we've obviously got the relationship with Pick n Pay, where you can actually acquire your groceries using crypto. We've done the same with, we've actually got something similar with Hydraulics, actually, is a store in Sandton. They've got quite a chain stores. They actually allow it too. I think there's a few stores in Cape Town that we've also got strategic relationships with. So I think so we definitely are moving on driving utility and very universal utility. And to your point, to ensure that at some point you could literally drive in, go to McDonald's, or you'll have a great dinner and have pay in crypto. That's effectively the dream, and that's what we're working towards.
Hi guys, thank you very much for the event. Two questions in the legal vein. One, what is Binance's licensing situation in South Africa on the CASP side of things? And secondly, would love to know how travel rule has impacted the business generally, globally and in South Africa. Thank you.
Okay, we're just divvying it up. I'll address the licensing part, and Sam will address the travel rule part. So I think where we are in terms of a license, we have applied, and I think it's common knowledge. And at the end of the day, once you've applied, you still work under the exception that you treat it as if you have the license until a determination has been made. End of last year, beginning this year, we had the FSCA report on its finding. I think over 250 licenses were issued. I think there's about 59 that's still pending, and Binance falls within that pending space. I can give you a lot of reasons. They become very technical in this because of the size of our business. We obviously get more attention, but nonetheless, where that is, it is in progress. It is, I can't predetermine what the regulator would say, but I can give you my comment, and it is inevitable, and it is soon, and it is imminent, but we'll obviously wait until that's officiated. But for now, we still treat it as any other licensed player. And I just want to take a step back in terms of this licensing gimmicks that you might see from other competitors, and I'm not hating. But if you recall when the SARB, and just switching hats now, I came from the South African Reserve Bank before I joined Binance. If you recall what the SARB issued in terms of how we were going to structure the regulations, is that they said this was just an interim measure for the Conduct Authority to issue out these CASP 1 phase FSP licenses. But there is still going to be more legislation that's going to come around regulating crypto players, and that would probably be a fuller license, let's say that. And you've seen that already in the draft Kofi bill. That also being said is, if you look at it globally, there's generally two approaches that any jurisdiction takes. They normally say, let's rather open up a sandbox and allow people to test in that space before we then convert into licenses, or other people would, and they'd create a separate legislation for it, or as we are doing, we try and merge our sector into the existing type of legislations, and sometimes it becomes a bit tricky. So in that process that we're going through, we still very much in the forefront, and the accolades or the titles, etc., will follow afterwards, but definitely from a foundational perspective, we plugged in.
I think
sorry, just a quick clarification question. So at the moment, Binance operates in South Africa off the basis that the application is pending, or is there some kind of like a JR agreement with someone? Or
So that's two things. So the one we're talking about is derivatives, where you're talking about a juristic representation agreement. That's what we have with 5 West, which is a registered FSP. So that's for the derivative business. And because, again, there's fragmentation in terms of how the law is set up. So you look at the Financial Markets Act, right? It gives that structure. It's basically almost like license passporting, where you kind of sub-delegate the regulator's responsibility to an FSP, and that FSP in turn can partner or enter into a contract with various parties to a certain degree. Whether or not that's sustainable, whether or not that will change, especially with the introduction, like I mentioned, to Kofi Bill, is yet to be seen, because some of those requirements, and I think some people that trade derivatives would have noticed that we migrated from Brickhouse Trading Limited, a Seychelles entity, to Bahrain Binance entity, and that was purely because Bahrain got a license. We got a license in Bahrain, and we decided to use that regulated entity. There were some teething issues because now we have 2 regulators to deal with. We have the VARA, the Bahraini regulator, and then we also still have to deal with that. So we adapt, and obviously we allow that, but that's the derivatives leg. What I was talking about in terms of the pending and eventuality is spot and the other products.
Yeah, great. I think there was a question on travel rule and how that's, so I think practically, look, it's obviously been very difficult. We sat 2 venues down about a month ago at a conference with the Financial Intelligence Center, and I think I recall I was on a panel there with, it was Valor, Luno, quite a few people. And we discussed this in great detail, and we said, look, ultimately, the bigger exchanges obviously will always be at a competitive advantage. We've implemented travel rule in several jurisdictions across the world, so the implementation wasn't really the problem. The problem with travel rule is effectively the counterparty leg, which requires the counterparty due diligence, where you share information with smaller exchanges, which may not have the same information, same level of information privacy and securitization of their systems. And if you read the legislation literally, it effectively suggests that if the counterparty isn't of an acceptable standard and you employ a risk-based approach, you effectively can't enable trades, which effectively leads to a very absurd conclusion. So we've had several engagements. We're now obviously also engaging even at an industry level. I'm part of a group where we've got ourselves, Johan from Valor, Garabo from Valor, Johan from Luno, Dave from Altcoin Trader. We're always trying to engage the regulators as much as we can, just to ensure that we've got a very progressive and sensible implementation. And of course, look, we'll continue to work with our counterparties there. We're working on it as an industry to effectively ensure that we reach the level of compliance as warranted by the regulator, but then at the same time cause the least amount of client friction. Because if you're not doing business for your clients, you're not in business at all. So that's the balancing act there.
Cool. Thank you very much, guys.
Great stuff. So yeah, I think that concludes the Q&A session. It was much longer than anticipated, but we welcome that and very thankful for the engagement.